The sound hit before anyone processed what happened. That crack, sharp, flat, unmistakable. Not a glass breaking, not a chair scraping, a hand against a face. And then silence. The kind that gets installed by something so wrong that 200 people's nervous systems simultaneously hit pause. The Gayageum quartet stopped mid-phrase. A flower girl froze with rose petals still in her fist. A waiter held a tray at a 45-degree angle and just stayed there, like a painting. At the center of it all, Natasha Minyi, now Natasha Song, as of 47 minutes ago, stood with her hand pressed to her cheek. White dress, jade earrings, a red bloom rising under her left eye like a bruise the universe decided to fast-track. And standing 2 feet from her, breathing hard, knuckles still tingling. Derek, her ex-boyfriend, a man who had not been on the guest list, a man who had flown 17 hours from Atlanta, Georgia, bluffed his way through security with a catering uniform bought that morning near Hongdae, and waded through the ceremony, through the vows, through the first dance, just to do this. Which meant every single person in that room was now not staring at the man sitting at table 1. The man who had just watched someone put a hand on his wife. His name was Song Minyi. And here's what you need to understand before this story goes any further. He didn't stand up. He didn't shout. He didn't do any of the things that the 2 men flanking him, men whose necks were roughly the diameter of a human torso, looked absolutely ready to do on his behalf. He just picked up his glass of Bixiju, took a slow sip, set it back down, and smiled. That smile. People described it differently afterward. One bridesmaid said it was the smile of someone handed an unexpected gift. The best man said it reminded him of a documentary about crocodiles, the part where the crocodile sees something enter the water and just goes still. Natasha's aunt, who'd flown in from Atlanta, said quietly to her therapist 3 weeks later, it was the smile of a man who already knew exactly how this was going to end. And in about 4 minutes, Derek Weston would be sitting across a lacquered table from that man, alone, and that smile would be the last warm thing in the room. But none of them knew that yet. None of them had any idea they were watching the beginning of the most consequential 60 seconds of Derek Weston's entire life. So let's go back. Natasha had grown up in Southwest Atlanta, the P of neighborhood where you learn early the world hands you nothing, so you build your own hands. Her mother worked double shifts at Grady Memorial. By the time she was 17, she was running her own schedule, her own finances, and her own expectations. She came to Seoul on a Fulbright at 23, stayed because the city matched her engine, and by the time Derek met her, she was a senior brand strategist at one of the top agencies in Mapogu, frequently the only Black woman in the room, navigating it with the kind of calibrated composure that made rooms recalibrate around her. Derek was fine, charming in the way people who have never been seriously challenged tend to be charming, easy, unguarded, enough genuine warmth that you didn't immediately clock the shallowness underneath. He'd come to Seoul teaching English, pivoted into expat content creation, had 40,000 Instagram followers watching him eat street food in Itaewon. They dated for 2 years. It was genuinely good Jeju weekends, inside jokes that mixed English and Korean in ways that only made sense to them. His mother on a video call, squinting at the screen, "Baby, she is beautiful. You better not mess this up." He messed it up. Friday nights with stories that didn't add up. A name in his phone he reacted to with the specific over-explained defensiveness of a man who knows exactly why you're asking. She ended it on a Tuesday, her things out before he got home, key on the counter, 6 words. I think we both know. Take care. Derek did not accept it. 4 months of calls, texts, 2 appearances at her office near World Cup Stadium, a 6-page handwritten letter that was more about what he deserved than what she needed. She filed a restraining order. He backed off. And here, where most stories like this end. Derek got worse. Not openly. Inside the locked room where he kept his self-narrative, he rewrote everything. She hadn't left him, she'd wronged him. He was the overlooked protagonist. And then he watched from a distance as her life started to get very good. the promotion, the Yongsan apartment with a Han River view, and then 18 months after the breakup, a photo. Natasha at a rooftop in Itaewon, laughing next to a man. Korean, older, silver at the temples, dark suit that didn't need to try. Song Minyi. Derek spent 3 days on it. What he found, 44 years old. Private equity and logistics, headquartered in Uido, offices in Singapore, Macau, Busan. A 2020 Korean business magazine profile calling him an operator who moves between the visible and invisible layers of Korean commerce. That was the polite version. The less polite version, the one in the investigative journalism pieces Derek should not have been reading at 2 a.m., mentioned 3 separate gray market economy investigations, always adjacent, never charged. 2 contract disputes that had escalated beyond conventional business. One ended with the other party relocating to Japan. The other ended with the other party in a hospital in Incheon. What would you do with that information? If you have functioning risk assessment software, you close the tab. You accept that the woman you dated now exists in a different physics than you do. You grieve. You move on. Derek printed the photos. The engagement announcement hit 14 months later, a mutual friend at a Hibangshan housewarming, casual as weather. Did you hear? Natasha's engaged. Private kaiseki dinner in Kyoto. He proposed at a castle or something. Derek left, sat in a Kako taxi going nowhere for an hour. Something that had been quietly corroding, snapped. He moved back to Atlanta, told everyone's soul had run its course. Spent 3 months cycling through options, confront her, write her, show up before the wedding. All of it dissolved against the ghost of the restraining order and the reality of being on the wrong continent. And then someone told him the date, the venue, a converted hanok estate in the hills above Bukshan Hanok village, 200 guests, large enough that one extra face in a catering uniform wouldn't flag. Derek booked the flight. The plan, the original plan, was just to talk. 5 minutes. Say the things he'd never been allowed to say. Make her understand what she'd cost him. The plan did not survive walking into a lantern-lit courtyard and seeing Natasha Song in a white dress, laughing. Effortlessly happy in a way that made every revised narrative feel suddenly, viscerally, pathetically small. He watched from behind a service corridor. Watched Song Minyi hold her like something he'd waited his whole life to hold. Watched her throw her head back at something whispered in her ear. And Derek felt something he hadn't expected. Not heartbreak, something smaller and meaner. The specific sting of a man forced, against his will, to see himself clearly. He walked out of the corridor, across the courtyard stones. Called her name. She turned. For a half-second, just a half-second, something flickered in her eyes. Not fear, not love, recognition. The recognition you give a bad memory that's suddenly standing in front of you in a catering uniform at your wedding. And Derek Weston raised his hand. He slapped her. Table 1 was 20 feet away. Song Minyi was at table 1. Seo Kangmin on his left, 3 intimidation-related incidents across Gangnam and Mapo. Jeon Mingkayu on his right, a scar along his jawline from what he called a disagreement in Busan. Both started rising immediately. Song Minyi put one hand out. Flat, stay. They stayed. He looked at Derek, stood up, walked across the courtyard at the pace of a man on an evening stroll, stopped in front of him. Extended his hand. Derek, he said, quiet, almost warm, English precise and unhurried. I've heard about you. Derek shook it, shook the hand. Whether reflex or shock or some primal compliance with social ritual, he shook the hand of the man whose wife he'd just struck. Come with me, Song Minyi said. Have a drink. The way you say it to an old friend. The way you say it when the answer is optional, but you've decided to let the other person believe it might be. Seo Kangmin and Jeon Mingkayu flanked Derek without anyone noticing when they'd moved. Derek went. What would you do? You're Derek. Catastrophically stupid thing just executed in front of 200 witnesses. The husband, that husband, is walking you personally toward a private room. Do you go? Do you run? Do you scream because at least there are still witnesses? Derek went. The Saranki, the inner reception room of the Hanok, was low-ceilinged, dark cedarwood beams, hangy screens diffusing amber light, a lacquered table, a ceramic bottle of aged andong soju, and a single window looking onto a stone-walled garden with no visible cameras. Seo Kangmin closed the sliding door. Jian Mingkaiu stood in front of it. Song Minyi poured 2 cups, set one in front of Derek, sat cross-legged across from him, unhurried, not angry, interested like a man handed a problem he found genuinely engaging. Sit. Derek sat. Drink. Derek drank, hand shaking. He could feel it. Could feel Song Minyi watching him feel it, the humiliation layered on top of the fear, being seen completely as a man vibrating with the consequences of his own choices. Song Minyi sipped, regarded him. You loved her, not a question. Silence. It's all right, she's easy to love. I understand the impulse. He turned the cup slowly in his fingers. What I don't understand is the slap. Help me understand that. Derek spoke. The exact words vary by account, but the substance. He needed her to feel something. Couldn't stand watching her be happy like he'd never existed, like none of it had ever mattered. Song Minyi listened, every word. So this was about your pain, he said, not accusatory, academic. Derek said yes. Song Minyi nodded slowly, then leaned forward. What you did tonight could have ended several different ways. Most of them would not have been good for you, choosing not to let them end that way. Not because I'm a forgiving man, not because what you did was excusable. He paused. Because she asked me not to. Hear what nobody in that courtyard knew. Natasha had seen him coming. Not at the last second before. 30 seconds before Derek moved, she'd spotted him at the edge of the courtyard light. Recognized the uniform as wrong. Recognized him as wrong. Felt the specific cold drop in her stomach that a black woman learns to feel when familiar danger enters a space she has worked very hard to make safe. 30 seconds. She didn't alert security, didn't move toward table 1, didn't create distance. She held still. Because she'd done the math faster than anyone else in the room. If Minyi sees Derek coming, Minyi acts first. And if Minyi acts first, at his own wedding, with 200 witnesses, with his name already in 3 investigative files, what happens next is not an incident. It is a situation. She calculated it was safer to absorb whatever Derek was going to do, and then get to Minyi before his instincts locked in. The slap landed before she finished the calculation. But the moment Song Minyi stood and started crossing the courtyard, she was 3 steps behind him. Before they reached Derek, before the extended hand, before any of it, she put her hand on Song Minyi's arm. 2 words, Korean, quiet enough that no one else caught them. Except the one word people nearby heard. Jebel, please. And Song Minyi, a man who operated with a very specific and unsentimental relationship to the word no, stopped, looked at her, searched her face, found what he needed, and chose the Saranki. That is the detail that changes everything. Because this is not a story about what Song Minyi was capable of doing. It is a story about Natasha, a black woman from Atlanta who had absorbed the slap on purpose, managed both men simultaneously, deployed one word that stopped a freight train. While wearing a wedding dress. At her own wedding. Back in the Saranki, Derek was still sitting with it, because she asked me not to. She doesn't want you hurt, Song Minyi said. She wants you to leave. He stood, buttoned his jacket. Those 2 things used to be unrelated for people who did what you did tonight. The only reason they're related right now for you is her. He nodded to Seo Kangmin. A sleek black document folder appeared on the lacquered table. Derek was fairly certain it hadn't been there when they walked in, which meant someone had brought it, which meant this room had not been entirely spontaneous. There's a car outside the North Service entrance, Song Minyi said. Incheon Airport or your hotel, your choice. In the folder is a document, not a threat, an agreement. Tonight didn't happen. You were never here. You have no further interest in my wife's life in any form, and should you develop such an interest in the future, you understand the terms under which it would be received." He picked up his cup, finished it. "Sign it, take the car, go back to Atlanta, and spend whatever time you have left on this planet being grateful," she said, Jebel. He moved to the door, paused with his hand on the frame, didn't turn. "The women we damage because we can't metabolize our own feelings, they are not responsible for managing the damage. You put that on her tonight, at her wedding." Now he turned, just enough. "Whatever story you've been telling yourself about what you deserved from her, let it go. It's fiction." He left. Co. Kangmin set a pen on the folder. Derek signed. He took the car. The reception resumed 43 minutes later. The DJ, a friend of Natasha's who ran sets in Itaewon, dropped something that moved between Afrobeats and R&B like it had been built for exactly this crowd. Because it had been. Because Natasha made the playlist herself. Song Min-yi walked back into the courtyard. Found Natasha with Priya and her mother, who had flown from Atlanta in a gold Geel, and a do-not-test-me energy that had carried the room all evening and was now doing serious structural work, keeping 200 shaken guests from unraveling. He took the champagne glass gently from Natasha's hands. Both hands, took them in his. "Kogwenchana Anus, okay." She looked at him. "You didn't." "No." She exhaled, long, slow. Then Natasha Song, who had grown up in Southwest Atlanta learning that preparation is not paranoia, that knowing what's coming is not pessimism, that staying calm in rooms not built for you is a skill you build brick by brick until it becomes armor, rolled her shoulders back, tilted her chin up. "Then let's dance." And they did. The white dress moved. The jade earrings caught the lantern light. Song Min-yi kept one hand at the small of her back and held the other the way you hold something you are not willing to lose, while 200 people watched and tried to decide what they'd actually just witnessed. The document Derek signed. A lawyer friend looked at it 3 days later over drinks in Midtown Atlanta. She read it twice, set it down. "Where did you get this?" Derek said he'd signed something at an event abroad. "It's clean, non-disclosure, non-contact civil penalty clause, but the jurisdictional language specifies Seoul and Singapore courts." She tapped the notary stamp. "This seal is registered in Macau." Derek asked what that meant practically. "It means if you violate it, enforcement doesn't live in a Georgia courthouse. It lives somewhere considerably less procedural." Long sip. "Did you do something bad?" "I made a mistake." "Don't make it again." He didn't. Derek deleted his soul content, all 3 years of it, moved quieter online, started therapy, stayed this time. But the question everyone actually wants answered, was Natasha okay? Yes and no, and both at the same time. She was fine because she'd expected this. Done the math, closed that account years ago, the balance was 0. She wasn't devastated by Derek Weston, she wasn't even angry. She was not fine because there is a specific exhaustion that comes from being a black woman who has to be the calmest person in the room for her own safety. Who absorbs a slap on purpose because losing 1 second of calculation might mean something escalates past the point of control. Who had stood in that courtyard and made decisions that nobody else in the room was equipped to make, in real time, in a wedding dress, while everyone else was frozen. That exhaustion doesn't go away over a dance. She told Song Min-yi about the 30 seconds weeks later, their Yongsan apartment, Han River spread below them, Seoul doing what Seoul does at night. Glittering, relentless, alive. He went quiet, then, "You should have told me." "If I had, you would have moved first." He didn't argue. "I don't want you calculating those things. I don't want you absorbing things because you're afraid of what I'll do." She looked at him. "I'm not afraid of what you'll do," she said. "I know exactly what you'll do, that's different." He waited. "I chose you knowing who you are. I didn't marry you in spite of it, but I married you because you stopped when I said Jebel. That matters more to me than anything else about that night." Long silence. He's not coming back, Song Minyi said. Administrative fact. I know. The note, he said. Did you get what you wanted? She looked at the river. I got what I needed, which is different. So here's the final truth. This is not a story about Song Minyi's power. It's not a cautionary tale about crashing the wrong man's wedding. Those things are the surface, the part that makes you click. But the actual story is about Natasha. About what it costs to be the calm one, the calculating one, the one who sees the train coming 30 seconds before impact and has to decide, alone, in real time, whether to move or absorb. About the note she'd already written before he arrived, the folder already prepared, the one word deployed at exactly the right second, the math done faster than anyone else in the room while 200 people stood frozen. That is not luck. That is not instinct. That is a black woman from Atlanta who learned early that the world doesn't warn you. So you stay ready. You do the work. You write the note before you need it. 200 people at that Buckshan wedding thought they were watching a story about a dangerous man. They were watching a woman who could not be diminished. She absorbed the slap. She said Jebel. She wrote the note first. And then she danced. Derek Weston is in Atlanta. Different city energy, still in therapy, the work is happening. Song Minyi and Natasha honeymooned in Jeju. A photo on Priya's private Instagram later described simply, she looked really happy. The kind you can't manufacture. The kind that looks like someone who set down something heavy and is still feeling the lightness of the empty hands. Some doors close with a legal document. Some close with a note. Some close with a song over a lantern-lit courtyard, a hand at the small of your back, and the grace of choosing to keep dancing when the music hasn't stopped. That's where this ends. Not with a threat, not with a consequence, with a woman who finally, irrevocably, put the past exactly where it belongs. And a man crossing the Han River Bridge at midnight in a black Genesis, holding a note in shaking hands, having the worst and most necessary night of his life. The door closed. For the first time, for everyone involved. It stayed closed. Subscribe. Hit that like button because next week starts in the middle of something you won't see coming. It always ends somewhere true.